Hello, everyone, and welcome to this next session of Truth Shots with Kapil, the De Addiction series. Today, I'm extremely proud to have with me a colleague from the Indian advertising and marketing fraternity, Niranjan Kaushik. Niranjan is not just somebody from the advertising and marketing fraternity. He's also a film director, an author, a showrunner, a content creator, a curator, a screenwriter, and of course, along with that, an advertising professional. His works include the 9 hour show, Candy, which was done for Geo Cinema, actually the previous version of Geo Cinema, Karanjit Kaur, the biopic of Sunny Leone, which was done for Z5. And he has been in advertising, working for brands like Lee Cooper, L'Oreal, Mercedes, Volkswagen, HSBC, Asian Paints, Cadbury, Hitachi, Airtel, and the list goes on and on. Today, we are going to specifically talk about his recently authored book, Kick Smoking with Ninja, which is a self-help book that helps smokers quit the habit of smoking. Let me first turn it over to him, and then we can proceed further into our session. So, thank you so much for being here, Niranjan. Over to you.
Thanks, Kapil. Thanks for having me. Pleasure talking to everyone here. As Kapil introduced me, I've had a substantially long career with the media industry, with advertising, filmmaking, long form cinema, long form web series. The moment web series actually launched, but what I would insist on is that my while my career with the media industry may seem long, I've had a far more intense and deep relation and deep, and I wouldn't call it meaningful exactly, but it a telling relationship with particularly cigarettes and the smoking addiction. And I think in order to explain a lot, and at any point, Kapil, just stop me and ask questions if anything is too fast or anything. But I'm just going to talk through my entire process of probably how I even started smoking in the first place, because it's necessary to know that, because one of the telling points in my journey, and I've been quit for over 8 years now. And when I say quit, not a single smoke. And if there's someone who's sitting in front of me and lighting a cigarette and giving it to me, my mind has now developed the ability to say, no, thanks, I'm not even interested in it. I'll probably not even feel the need to even walk away from it, because it doesn't sit in my scheme of things anymore. And that is necessary to, in order to get there, it is actually necessary to know and understand where our addiction and how our addictions began in the first place. So for me, I've grown up in uh, the neighborhood of Juhu in Bombay, which back in the day, so I was born in the 70s. So when growing up was probably 80s, and 80s in Juhu at that time was an extremely like a film industry related neighborhood, and smoking across us was it was all over the place. It was on our television screens, it was on our movie screens. You go to a neighbor's house, his father smoking, my own house, my father was smoking. My mother was probably the only non-smoker in our family, so it was my father, my aunts, my uncles, everyone was smokers, and our neighbors. We would go to your friend's house, there are people smoking. So there was absolutely nothing taboo about it, or it was just, I mean, it's like if you watch any season of Mad Men, the 1960s advertising show now, you actually look at it and wonder, oh God, how did people take so much smoking back in the day? But that's really how it was, and I've seen this happen. And smoking was a very, very, very natural thing to do. And um, you know, I even remember seeing advertising which had there was a famous brand called Camel, where one of their famous campaigns was more doctors smoke Camel than any other cigarette. Or if you're in
I
stress
remember.
for
I
a
remember.
surgery, yeah, yeah, smoke a Camel and then do your surgery. So it was that legit in society. I remember taking a flight way back when I was a child, where my father was sitting next to me on the aircraft and smoking a cigarette. And you could smoke in flights, you could smoke in airports, you could smoke inside
Mhm.
buses, taxis, everywhere. So it was completely legit. And for me, growing up in such an environment, smoking was something very normal and natural to go to, and it was never even seen uh, as taboo or as bad for health, because we all did that, and I did that, all my friends did that. And there was never any thought of why we shouldn't do that, because that's what you did. And while I come from such a family, and for me, it was. I must have smoked my very first cigarette when I was perhaps 11 or 12 years old, and that must have
Wow.
been probably one of my father or my uncle's half-finished cigarette from the ashtray, which I've just probably out of curiosity put it, lit it, and smoked it.
Sure.
And maybe the first puff felt awful, you put it off, and then
The
you
first cigarette you would have smoked would probably be at the age of 3 when your father and your uncles and aunts were smoking and you were probably sitting in a crib inhaling all of that
inhaling it. Yeah,
smoke.
yeah, yeah. So the first cigarette goes back even before that. So probably, yeah, as soon as I was born, probably. And like I said, it was just completely normal. You just had kids on
It
your
was
lap.
all normal. There is, yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And I've
So,
seen, I recall seeing pictures of me sitting on my father's lap, and there's a cigarette in my father's hand. And today it's
absolutely,
unthinkable. It's unthinkable. So while
yeah. Somebody could even go to jail for that. Now, of course, they will be socially ostracized, but somebody could even go to jail with that.
somebody could even go to prison today, yeah. And for such
Absolutely.
someone who grew up in such a family, such not just a family, such a neighborhood, such a social circle, so to speak, smoking was absolutely normal. Now, however, that is not the only reason you take to smoking, because in one of the things I've also explored in the book is that there were, while we were growing up, there were kids in my school from families that were diametrically opposite to mine, diametrically. So they were, our family was considered like the liberal juhu filmy family where everyone smoked, and then there were those slightly more sort of straightforward families where those families were the kind of families whose parents told their children, they pointed out to me and said, that guy Niranjan, don't hang around with him because he smokes. उसके पिताजी सिगरेट पीते हैं, उसका चाचा सिगरेट पीता है, उसके सब आंटी सिगरेट पीते हैं, don't hang around with me. Now, surprisingly, kids from those families also started smoking
Yeah.
at that age, because while we did it because it was a sense of belonging, they did it out of a sense of rebellion. But whatever it was, the tobacco industry was so smart that whether you were following a hero that you saw on your screen, or you saw a rebel on your screen who was trying to rebel against society by smoking, they very cleverly planted a cigarette in both their hands. Now, if you look at cinema back in the 70s and the 80s, there will be the really cool, rich, stylish hero who would also smoke. At the same time, there would be an Amitabh who comes from a poor family who's trying to, rebel against his blind mother and poor family, and he's also smoking. So, actually, without knowing, uh, and I genuinely believe this. I may not have hard evidence, but I genuinely believe this, where I think big tobacco actually funded a whole lot of cinema, not just in India, but abroad as well. And they just made sure, and there was this huge, understanding or nexus between the filmmaking industry and the tobacco industry, where that you keep people smoking on
Let's
screen.
not talk about who all was funded by, who all funded the Bollywood or the movie industry. That would be an
Yeah, yeah,
entire,
that's a can of worms. Yeah,
exactly. That will
that's a
be
new can of
entire
worms.
season by itself, not just a session.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I guess let's jump into the work that in a lot of ways both of us have a lot in common in that sense, that we are both working to try be de-addiction agents, de-addiction champions for people. So in Kick Smoking with Ninja, your book, you have explored the psychology of addiction.
Right.
How do you see that translating to other forms of addiction, such as vaping, alcohol, digital, addiction? So, gaming, gambling, social media, internet, porn, for that matter. How do you see, the approach translating to these other forms?
It works absolutely flawlessly with any form of addiction, because the moment you start understanding what an addiction is when you start realizing what it really is. And what it really is that, you are in a way convincing your brain that this is something you need. This is something that, keeps you entertained. This is something that fulfills some form of shortcoming in you. This is something that leaves you with a sense of reward at the end of it. And this is something that makes you look socially acceptable, depending on what it is. If it is porn, obviously it doesn't make you look socially acceptable. But what really has happened there, if you go 2 layers below, is that what the brain has done is that the brain has taught itself how to think in a certain way. And that really is addiction, where your brain teaches you some to think in a certain way, that you need a certain substance or a certain thing to keep going, in order to keep going. Now, if you really break that down and maybe rewind a few years, um, you were never born this way. Nobody was born a smoker. Nobody was born watching porn. Nobody was born gambling. Nobody was born an alcoholic.
Mhm.
None of us are born that way at all. So that is not actually our natural way of a thinking or b living. And all it really needs, in order to switch from uh, being an addict to not being one, is to actually go back to who you really are. And who we really are not addicts. Who we really are people who don't really need anything other than people who enjoy good food, clean air, good water. That's all we really enjoy. So it actually needs, it's very simple, because you just need to be yourself all over again and stop being the person you thought you were, which you yourself convinced yourself. Nobody else convinced you. Actually, it is your own self fooling yourself in order to keep your addiction alive, which is the chemical nature of the substance.
Right. Having said that, it's
Hmm.
not that addiction is something that most people can purely simply give up just by their willpower. So there is external support, there is external intervention, and all that is needed. And in fact, in the Praram Life program, so the technology enabled program that we have, which is available on the Soul Wellness platform, that's one of the things that we do as well. Have a full psychology based intervention that is available in the form of videos and all. And we think people going through that kind of an exercise or activity, looking at the psychological dependence on addictions, exploring the reasons why they started and why they became an addict in the first place, providing them with that sense of fight or flight, or providing them with that sense or capability, can really help transform their addiction habits and can really get them out of that circle.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, knowledge is power, right? And that's why, not just when you're breaking free from the addiction, it is very necessary to have all the things that you mentioned about understanding the psyche of what keeps you within a certain habit or a certain addiction. Knowing this, understanding this, and keeping abreast with it for the rest of your life is very, very necessary, because uh, it is that easy to succumb back, or what they call, go down the slippery path once you're sort of out of it. But the trick is to, when you're constantly in a state of mind which is of awareness, which is of knowledge, which is of understanding why I was addicted in the first place, the more your brain sort of starts becoming powerful enough to say, look, I really don't need this, I really don't need this, I really don't need this. And I do it till date. I keep even when I don't need to, I sometimes read sections of my own book. I go through my own notes when I was writing it, on what I was going through. I go through my own pictures of what I looked like while I was a smoker. And I have a whole lot of, in this very computer in front of me, I'll have a whole lot of before and after pictures of how I
Right.
look before.
What we call as coping mechanisms.
Yeah, but these are all coping mechanisms. So it really helps, uh, and very necessary to have that always handy. So absolutely.
Sure. So, substance abuse in any form, whether it is a substance use, problem, or whether it is even a behavioral addiction problem, they often come with the social element attached to it. So, and for many people, they think that individuals need to change them. They need to change their environment or their social circles when they are trying to quit any kind of addiction. What advice would you give to someone who's struggling with peer pressure in these situations?
Uh, See, this is actually dependent on the substance or the behavior that you're addicted to. Uh, because so now, with regard to just smoking, in fact, one of the things my book or my program strongly, strongly, strongly advocates is that, when you have made up your decision to stop smoking and when you've actually put out that last cigarette, do not change anything else around you. Do not stop your,
Absolutely.
do
Absolutely.
not stop yourself from going to a bar and having a drink. Do not stop yourself from going out with your friends and enjoying a movie. Do not stop any of the things that you did, because the moment you start doing that, with the moment you start to change your life because you've changed one thing about your life, there is a slight possibility, and this is true with regard to smoking or drinking, I would say, where if you stop doing certain other things in order to not do the things that you've decided to stop doing, whether smoking or drinking, there is an outside chance that somewhere you might feel a sense of sacrifice, or a sense of, oh, where's my life going? Oh God, I miss it. A sense of something missing. Let that not happen. In fact, go ahead and start noticing how much better life is without that smoke. Now, go ahead and enjoy a drink. In fact, I did that. I advocate that in the book, and I did that personally. So the day I decided to stop smoking, after that, the next 4 days, I was hanging around at one of my favorite bars in Bombay, and I was and this was the same bar outside which I used to stand and smoke about 5 cigarettes a night, 6 cigarettes a night. I went to that same bar. I ordered my drink. I had it. And by the third night, you start realizing that the drink you're having actually starts tasting better. The food you're ordering starts tasting better. And guess what? What you're not really missing out on anything. And the only thing you're probably missing out on is how badly your clothes smell, once you go back home, because suddenly you're saying, oh, I've had a full night out and my hair, and I had long hair back then. And I said, my hair's not smelling of stinking of cigarettes. My clothes are not stinking of cigarettes. So this is actually good. So with regard to, yes, this kind of depending on the kind of addiction we are talking about, it may or may not be necessary to change the uh, surrounding or our social surrounding, so to speak. But I guess with regard to a thing like like, even I would say, even for pornographic addiction, if someone's addicted to pornography,
Mhm.
you can't take internet away from their life. You know, it is about having that internet in front of you and having a browser available in front of you, and then saying, "Do I really need that? No, I don't need that." So I do advocate not changing your social environment too much.
Absolute. I would 100% agree. In fact, one of the challenges that we look at, so when I was deep diving into the de-addiction industry or the addiction industry alternately, one of the things that I saw is most people, to get rid of their addictions, would change, totally transform their their existing environment. They would go into a rehab center, they would
Right.
explore, they would put in a lot of restrictions around them and everything. And then one day after they have quit, they will come back and they will go into a relapse because their surroundings and their environment and everything changes back to what it
Absolutely.
used to be. So, what is extremely important when you are considering de-addiction, or when you are considering quitting a habit, or removing reliance on a habit, you keep your social environment, you keep everything around your life as
Intact.
the same. Or alternately, it is definitely possible that in some cases you change, but then you need to be aware that you are changing for good. It's not like I
Right.
will leave it while I'm going through de-addiction and then I will come back and I will meet with the same friends. I will do the exact same things. I will, follow everything. You need to decide and be clear on which of the two you are going to do. Having said that, I have a follow up on this. So one of the things that we have noticed, or one of the learnings that I have gathered over the years, is addiction for every individual is very unique. Their behavior type is very unique, and based on and there is, if I would go look at a lot of nutrition based, gut health based, or ayurveda based research, it would suggest that de-addiction is also dependent on the individual, the kind of food habits they have, and stuff like that. So what kind of a role do you think that plays as somebody is looking at addiction, and specifically as somebody is looking at addiction, and or you are looking at working with somebody in a very personalized, which is one of your core strengths, when you work with people, you provide, I mean, you talk about personal transformation and compassionate counseling. So how do you kind of look at that?
No, I didn't. Can you explain the question though? I didn't. quite.
So, do you think people's personal behavior types and their food habits have a large bearing, and how do you use that, or how is that part of what you do when you are working through with people in terms of de-addiction?
Uh, Personality types, yes. Personality types, yes. Food habits, not at all, in fact, again, because I don't think, particularly with regard to the few addictions that I specialize on, mainly smoking, second and third being weed and alcohol too. Uh, Food doesn't really play a game, role again, because I would much rather people continue eating what they eat and what they really enjoy eating, and start noticing how everything starts tasting better without your addictive substance playing a role in that. So not
Sure.
food as, but personality type, yes, it is very necessary for me with regard to every sort of uh, client I take on. Or anyone who comes to me for advice saying I'm planning to think of stopping smoking, my opening question, and that's where my brain starts, asking these questions to them, because it's trying to figure out in my own head on what kind of personalities they are. And personality type, yes. So what I try to change before I even try to change their addiction is that now they need to become a person where they genuinely want to do what they are wanting to do. So when someone comes and tells me, I want to stop smoking, and I would say, on a scale of 10, how badly do you want to stop smoking? And he would say, uh, 7 or 8, sir. And I would say, brother, you're
Don't
in
work.
deep trouble. You're in deep,
Absolutely.
deep trouble, because 7 or 8 or even 9 means that, and that is the personality type of the doubter, where he is not 100% sure of his decision. Uh, and that is where the personality type plays a big role, where when you're leaving that 1% to chance, saying, okay, 9 out of 10, 99% I want to smoke, or 90% I want to smoke, there's a 10% chance that I might relapse, is what you're actually giving yourself is a room. You're giving yourself a room to go back into your own mess. And
Yep.
the
Right.
moment you the moment you take that room away from you is when you become completely conflict free in your head, and that is genuine freedom. So the personality type I definitely try to achieve in anyone who attempts to quit a habit is that, look at it as being free from something. It's not about quitting something. So in fact, that's why the title of the book says kick smoking with ninja. It does not say quit smoking with ninja, because the moment you use the word quit, it implies a certain degree of sacrifice. It is not about sacrifice, it is about kicking. It is about a battle, it is about winning. It is
Yep.
about winning an evil that you have been taken over by, and that's the
So
personality I try to get people into before, so they need to go into it with, like how an athlete enters, like how a tennis player enters the tennis court. He says, I am going to win this. Nobody goes there to lose.
absolutely. In fact, one of the things that I always tell people, and there are, quite a few parents and other people that would come, and specifically because we also do a lot of behavioral addiction. And one of the things that I always tell everyone is addiction is something that absolutely needs a personal decision, not a decision for a sacrifice, like you rightly said, but a decision that says, I want to get out of it and I am willing to do something to get out of it.
I'm
So I
willing to take
recognize
action.
it from
Yes,
evil and I need to get out of it. Your parents wanting you to do it, your family wanting to do it, your friends wanting to do it, or you wanting to do it 70% or 80%, it doesn't work.
yes,
It,
no,
it, it does,
never,
it
never.
definitely needs a personal commitment from the individual, which is one of the things that we have done in the Pararam Life program, is we have a buddy system. So we say, while it requires full commitment from your side, but you need to be held accountable.
Absolutely, an accountability buddy. Yeah.
Right. So there is a buddy system that is there. In fact, we have gone ahead to the extent of actually creating a course for the buddy. So, and this came from a realization that somebody may select me as a buddy, and then I would sit there and say, I don't know what to do about it. So we actually created a program to teach the buddy how to be a good buddy. How do they need to do intervention? Don't be in the face, do this kind of intervention, do these kinds of checkups, support in this particular manner, and so we
So, but
do.
in this case, would your buddy would also have to be someone who's trying to kick a certain habit, right?
No,
Or not
no,
necessarily?
no.
Not
In fact, the buddy could be somebody close to you in your family, or close to you in your life. It doesn't have to be another addict.
okay.
So what
Won't
we
it,
say
I mean,
is,
just thinking aloud, won't it help better if it's someone who's going through the same thing and there are these two uh, so I'll tell you, I mean, why I'm asking you this is,
you're actually right. So let me I get what you where you are coming from. We also have a support system. So what
yeah,
we
a support system is what I meant. Yeah.
so what we have done is we have created support system at 5 layers. One layer is what is the buddy. So buddy is an individual from your life. We say it is a person that you trust, who can actually come and probably even abuse the shit out of you if you're not following, or who you would listen to. So just somebody coming out of your life, okay,
Hmm.
who will know more about you. The second part is there is a system where they have a capability that we call as talk now. So they can connect with a professional at any point whenever they want. The third part is there is a support group, which is where other peers, other people that are going through addiction, other, it may not be exactly same addiction, it may be different addiction also, but other people are part of that support group that we call on the platform. The fourth layer is what we call as a my diary. Okay, and along with my diary there are you have capability to monitor your stress, you have capability to look at your mood and the history and everything around that. And the fifth layer is you can actually fix a session with a psychologist or a psychiatrist based on what support that you require. So we have kind of created support within the program at these 5 different layers, which gives any individual going through the de-addiction program, going through the Praram Life program, the ability to always have support in all different forms at their hand.
Got it.
But otherwise, you are right. Sports, they do need. I mean, there is a reason why AA groups have always been very important for de-addiction, because
Yeah,
they
yeah, because there are I mean, it's always good to know that there are other people trying to fight the same ghosts, the fight the same demons along with you, and somehow just makes you feel a little stronger than you would make
re-
and less alone.
In
Yeah.
fact, I tell people going through all sorts of not just addictions, but even going through all sorts of mental health issues, even going through all sorts of physical health issues, that please do participate in support groups around them. One, because it gives you a lot of learning, it gives you things that you may not be aware of. And if you are if you are a different kind of individual, the satisfaction that other people are suffering the same that I'm suffering may even be important for you.
Yeah, yeah, it does. That's human nature.
Yeah, but no, somebody else is suffering more than me. Yeah, that's reasonably fulfilling. At least I can say personally,
Yeah,
at times it helps.
yeah.
Anyway, so we have established, and I think this is an extremely important part of how people need to look at the addiction, that integrating some kind of mental health support system, a psychology based program as part of your addiction is an extremely important thing to do. You could do that in the form of counselings, and in the form of sessions, and in the form of programs that you run. You could do that in the form of tech enabled kind of programs, more hands off programs like what we are doing with Praram Life. You could do this with various rehab and other centers that may be available, or you could even get support from the Alcohol Anonymous or other kind of support groups that may exist for that. So one of the things that people generally kind of, at least what we hear a lot from people, and I want to see your reaction to it, is the need and the concern related to anonymity. In your working, how critical or how important do you see that for people?
Very important to a large extent because uh, see, there is for anyone trying to come out of it, and I completely understand the need for it because, uh, you know, um, even for me, if I go back to my own sort of addiction, and when I first wanted to come out of it, and I was trying to find legit methods of coming out of it, uh, I did want that anonymity because, see, because when you are getting into it, or when you're in the process of making that decision that I want to stop being an addict, see, once you make that decision, you're an empowered individual. But till the point you actually make the decision, when you're arriving at the decision, you are not 100% sure you will succeed. And inherent in every human being is the fear of failing, and the fear of failing is not a fear of failing itself, but the fear of other people seeing you fail.
Yeah, I absolutely.
It's the fear of watching, letting other people see you fail, because the moment they see you fail, you will be perceived as a failure, and that fear probably is your biggest obstacle in actually becoming empowered. So anonymity in that sense would be important, uh, and that is why, I mean, that is why, you know, Alcoholics Anonymous is called that, and you're only seen by your own
Mhm.
fellow victims of alcohol
Right.
and your closest groups, and you would otherwise. Uh, so anonymity is, when you're trying to come out of it, important, and trust me, when forget coming out of it, when and I have seen people in the absolute depths of alcohol addiction, for example. Not cigarettes, I'm talking about alcohol this time, where the and you have no intention of quitting, and it's not about Alcoholics Anonymous. You have no intention of quitting. You're very happy to be drinking the way you are. In fact, you start drinking and I've had people in my own family do this. I've watched my uncles do this, where you start drinking at 11 in the morning, and then you go on till 11 at night. And at one point comes in a stage where it would initially start off with very proudly showing off your drink and drinking with everyone, chalo, 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 drink now. To that point where, you're literally hiding your drink in a metal cup, in a
Yeah,
metal tumbler at home, and, you're keeping it in one corner in the kitchen and pretending to walk into the kitchen
do
to get
whatever, and yeah,
and then quickly take 4 sips, and that is again anonymity, so if you reach a stage where you need to remain anonymous while you do it, and completely come out, you shave, you try to pretend you're not one, then I can also understand why people would need anonymity while coming out of it.
sure.
So necessary, I would think.
So, I guess one other aspect that I wanted to explore and get your inputs on. See, there is a need, at least if we look at India, to provide more scalable and affordable kind of capabilities when it comes to addiction. Right? Addiction is not a not a upper middle class problem. It's a middle class, lower middle class, or
So
probably
yeah,
exactly. It's a problem all
agnostic.
across.
It's
So
agnostic of class. Yeah.
exactly. So, what do you think? What are your ideas in terms of capabilities, in terms of solutions, in terms of what what we should be doing as a country, as a nation, for de-addiction?
Absolutely everything that we can, because you are absolutely right. Even as we speak today, mental health and addiction and wanting to overcome addiction is an extreme uh, high cost thing. And it needs, I mean, it needs just about anything money could buy. It needs the comfort of a home, it needs an internet connection, it needs access to literature. Uh, Even with, let's say, books on which help you how to overcome addiction, whether it's drinking, smoking, and when I was going through my own process, all the books I was reading, uh, I mean, these are all books by international authors that are available at Kindle or available. Otherwise, you have to import them abroad. So it is an expensive thing, and uh, it is very necessary for us as people who deal with addiction as a problem. It is for us to think about how to democratize this, so that it reaches out to everyone. And the more we do it with the simple goal of freeing mankind from addiction, the more we will succeed, as opposed to, how do we do this into another profit-making machinery like the substance did in the first place. So we need to do everything that we can. But in a country like India, yes, very necessary to reach out to absolute grassroots with everything, and having been someone who's worked in advertising, exactly the same approach we would take when we needed to sell something down to everyone in India. We would really cut the cost of it. So I'll give you a small parallel example, completely unrelated to addiction. But this is what we had done during my advertising career. Is L'Oreal was a brand I used to work on, and L'Oreal was an extremely high-end French brand
Mhm.
that only sold super expensive shampoos and super expensive conditioners uh, to people who could afford L'Oreal. L'Oreal was an upper middle class product, and then
Mhm.
suddenly with them coming on to India, and L'Oreal is a French company, and they're seeing the essence of what India could offer in terms of a marketplace. Uh, you know, we launched L'Oreal in India, and then 2 years later, we relaunched L'Oreal in India with something unthinkable that L'Oreal hadn't done anywhere in the world.
Mhm.
For the first time in the history of L'Oreal in the whole world, we cut down the size of the bottle to a sachet. So we started selling L'Oreal in a sachet. L'Oreal was never available in a sachet earlier. It would
Mhm.
only come in expensive looking plastic bottles. We sold L'Oreal in a sachet. And two, what we did was we converted the language of communication from English to wherever we are selling it. So if you're selling it in Tamil Nadu, convert it to Tamil. If
Particular
you're selling it
language.
in North, convert it to Hindi. In Maharashtra, convert it to Marathi. And when a brand becomes affordable and starts speaking the language of the consumer, is when the consumer starts actually giving it a chance. And that's exactly what we need to do with whatever we are trying to do in this space, where the cost shouldn't be prohibitive as it is right now, and B, it needs to be localized. It needs to be uh, you know told in a language that your listener is going to understand. Now, you and I can talk at length about what addiction is and the psychology of addiction and how it's within you to overcome it. Trust me, Kapil, if the even if we do it for 20 hours non-stop in our language of understanding addiction, in our language of communication, English, if you look at the guy who's standing downstairs my office right now, smoking two cigarettes back to back, and he doesn't care, he's not even going to understand, pay attention to himself.
In fact, let me take this to the next level. And I talk about this in all my mental wellness related work, not just in the de-addiction related work. When people are doing all sorts of communication, whether it is communication from an advertising perspective, whether it is something else, whether they are buying a product or something, and they see communication in English language, I think it is okay. The problem in addiction, mental health related, wherever you have to work from a psychology perspective, the problem is you have to go deep down. You
Absolutely.
have to come up with the thoughts that you normally would not be able to surface. They need to come up. You on the fly need to transfer them into English. You need to blur them out. Then you need to hear a response back in English. Do this translation into your vernacular language, because deep down you are only going to understand your vernacular language. You're not going to understand English. You convert it, you take it deep down, and then you do the process again. It doesn't work. Let me tell
Yeah.
you, mental wellness and de-addiction in English language only works for people who have English as their primary choice of language.
Primary language, and that's the language we studied everything else
Yeah,
in. Yeah.
people like me, who actually would say my mother tongue or my primary language is Hindi, are still okay, because prima facie I can communicate in English. I don't
Right.
need to translate it into Hindi and then kind of do the process. I don't talk like that. So I can probably do, but most people, and I'm not even talking about talking about bottom of the pyramid, lower middle class, middle. I'm even saying upper class people would require that kind of vernacular language support for them to be able to get help.
Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
and one of the things that I always, boggles my mind is when I look at government programs that focuses on, for example, Delhi is doing this, run against drugs. And I was jokingly talking to some government official, and I said, I'm not sure if a drug addict is going to come and do a 10-kilometer run with you. Of course, he didn't get the joke, but
Hmm.
anyway. So I just think there is more, not just in terms of communication. But let me ask you a question as a advertising professional. The one piece of content that we see around smoking all over is this, Mukesh cancer ad.
The one Akshay Kumar.
Right. Do you think there are more engaging ways to influence public health and kind of behavior through
Absolutely.
media? How can
There,
what more needs to be done? I remember there is this very I wouldn't call it an interesting movie, a very different movie which I saw only an hour of it. I couldn't tolerate it after that. But it was around this around this gunda who wanted to be a politician, and he started this program around I will stop alcohol behavior in my village, in my town, and then kind of an
oh,
interestingly done movie around that. Uh,
Hindi movie.
it's a Hindi movie, and that guy from Pyar Ka Panchnama, I can't remember his name.
Uh, Pyar Ka Manchana was not Sushant. No, no.
One of the three guys, not the bodybuilder. Call it the loser kind of the guy. There was
Kartik Aaryan. Pyar Ka
no, no,
Manchana.
Kartik Aryan wasn't a. I mean, he was a loser in some ways in the movie, but the third one,
Who was the third one in there? Can't remember.
yeah,
Okay.
the short guy. I can't remember.
Never mind, huh?
He has come in another movie with Shahid also, but like I'm bad with names and don't watch as many movies. But anyway, so there was this movie. But from your perspective, what more do you think Indian media and people like you and me coming from advertising profession? I mean, I'll give you an example. One of the things that I went to Philip Morris with, like almost 7, 8 years back, was a campaign that I lovingly called as "Smoke Responsibly."
Mm-hmm.
So I
Okay.
said, like, there is a drink responsibly campaign. Why don't
Mhm.
we do a smoke responsibly campaign? Don't smoke when you are in a closed room. Don't smoke when there are other people around. Don't do this. So basically, do like a smoke responsibly campaign. They liked it, but the problem was for them, every marketing needs to be communicated and needs to come out of the global headquarters. So, but anyway, what do you think from your perspective, Indian media and advertising professionals like you and me can do more?
That's a deep question. That's a deep question because there's just so much that needs to be done just with regard to education about, you know, smoking and, just showing that one Mukesh who's just, honestly, Mukesh is not the problem uh, to for example, the greatest problem right now with, again, the tobacco industry, or rather society, and what the tobacco industry is trying to do in the last maybe 3, 4, 5 years is it is trying to. I'll first come to what the problem is, and then I'll come to how it could probably possibly be addressed as media professionals. One of the things it is trying to do is, in order to make smoking legit again, because Gen Z, as we speak, are not as susceptible or as stupid as we were when we were growing up. We thought it's damn cool to smoke, so we smoked. Gen Z is a little more discerning. And now, if you notice the current trend, if you go around any panwala, what you'll see is that, they have infused a whole lot of flavors into cigarettes. Now you have orange flavored cigarette, vanilla flavored cigarette, and the other thing they've done is things like there's a little switch. Somebody was showing it to me recently. There's a little switch which if you press it, it activates the flavor. So first you light the cigarette, have a few drags, and then you press the switch, which is just like a little tiny switch that goes off in the cotton filter. And then once you switch it, it breaks into a vanilla flavor. And
In my personal view, I think tobacco industry has lost a lot of its customer base to weed and hash over the last few years. I think it's at least from what I see, that is way more rampant now than cigarette smoking. Only cigarette smoking is. But anyway, please go ahead.
Cigarette smoking, no, but they're trying, they're getting its customer base back, huh? And then,
I completely get that. And there
and
is, they are
vaping,
doing a lot to constantly innovate and do more.
constantly innovate and do more, and essentially behave exactly like drug addicts behave. I mean, sorry, drug dealers behave, which is what do you do as a drug dealer? I mean, it's just common sense, right? What a drug dealer does is he goes to school and he starts giving his cocaine or his heroin free, and he doesn't charge them for it because he knows that this is not actually free, but this is an investment for the next 40 years.
Yep.
And that is exactly what the tobacco industry is doing right now. They're going and creating all sorts of flavors, dropping the price so that youngsters pick it up. And once they pick it up, there's going to be no way out of that. So they
Yep.
stay within the. So the younger you reach them, the longer they stay with you to build your profit. And
Yep.
and that's where the essential problem is. And in order to address that, what we need to consistently as creative communications people should do is that this should be brought out as and when we can, in whatever manner we can. And this needs to be told that, when someone's telling you there's an orange flavored cigarette to smoke, remember it is still smoke, it is
A
not
cigarette.
orange, and you can just eat an orange instead. And that education needs to happen, because unless you address it at that age, showing a Mukesh is not going to help, because and Mukesh was the guy who doesn't buy sanitary napkins for his wife, or Mukesh was the other guy with the cancer in the mouth.
I think the one who doesn't buy the sanitary napkins.
Sanitary napkins, that's in a way.
I think
So,
that's the guy. And
yeah.
one of the things that that I have been talking for, not related to this, but related to a different subject. One of the things that I keep talking to people about is the problem with, I mean, so the rape is, a commonly talked about subject in India, more so these days. It's once again become a topic of conversations with the Kolkata case. Um, but and I started a Delhi for Women Safety campaign way back when Nirbhaya happened. The entire digital revolution at that time was led by us in the form of Delhi for Women Safety in 2012. So one of the things that I started talking about at that point, and I still maintain it, nobody does a rape thinking, oh, I'm not gonna get capital punishment. I may get life imprisonment. People
Hmm.
don't do. I mean, that's not a deterrent. That's not even important. You
Hmm.
tell somebody you are absolutely going to jail for 7 years, absolutely going to jail for 7 years. It will be a deterrent. The problem is people do rape because they think there is, no repercussion, not because they think it is 7 years versus 10 years versus 14 years versus life
Correct.
imprisonment versus capital punishment.
Correct.
And I think it's the same thing when you think about any kind of addiction or any kind of crime for that matter. People would go do something because they think there is no repercussion, not because they think it will cause cancer to me.
Correct. Correct. That they can get away with it is,
Exactly.
I could get away with this. And most smokers look at smoking like that. And I have seen literally, so when we were young, I've seen cigarette packets being absolutely spick and span and clean, to the just the size of the cancer shot they showed on the packet of cigarettes. It just increased from bigger to bigger until the whole pack was full of like a stone open mouth. But
Um,
that
um, it
never
never
stopped.
became a deterrent for anybody.
Yeah, you just look at it and go, हाँ ये मुझे नहीं होगा.
Huh. You just watch the Mukesh ad, you laugh. I mean, you
हाँ.
don't even, get fearful. You laugh and you kind of
Yeah, because
go to
that
the
is the
next thing.
psychology where this is not going to happen to me. Is the normal psychology of any addict.
Yep. In fact,
And
that's usually people's behavior around pretty much all sorts of such communication. So, what do you think in terms of what more can we do?
in with regard to, like
So,
I said, I mean, education right at the grassroots level is so important. We need to go to schools, we need to go to colleges, we need to start saying, listen, it's far harder to stop and it's far easier to never start. So don't do it. And the more, people like me who used to be, addicts and who have come out of it, speak out loud and clear, the more the cleaner society is going to be. And we need to be driven by an absolute vision. I mean, a mission that we will cleanse this world, because unless that vision, unless it is that we make it our mission, it's really not going to change. And somebody needs to
Some
make
of
that.
us need to make it our mission.
We
I
need to make
agree.
it a mission, and unless you make it a mission, it's never going to go anywhere. Um, in fact, one of the greatest anti-smoking or smoking cessation gurus, this guy whose sort of videos I really relied on 8 years ago when I was smoking. His name is Alan Carr. Uh, he he said it out loud on so many occasions that he said, as long as I live, I will try and cleanse this world of tobacco. And he genuinely meant that. Even when he said that to you in a video, you could tell from his eyes that he actually means it. For him, it was just this entire hatred of tobacco and nicotine addiction that, and you could feel his anger against big tobacco. You could feel his anger against big pharma. You could
Mhm.
feel, how pissed off he was at the nexus between them.
Yep.
And that's really what, I mean, we need to do whatever we can. I mean, I keep thinking of what else we could do. One of the things I'm definitely working on doing is getting the book translated into talking to Sohail on that,
Mhm.
getting it translated into every language possible. But see, again, then reading a book and then deciding to overcome your habit by reading a book is still a very sort of uh, self-indulgent way to do it. So
Right. In my view, at least, I think we need to do a lot more messaging and communication for people to identify themselves as addicts. One of the things that I keep seeing around, and I'm not just talking about smoking here, I'm talking about all sorts of addictions, both substance use as well as behavior. For a lot of people, and my father almost never kind of agreed that he's an addict. He's used to drink every day. He used to smoke every day. But for many years, for like decades, he lived in a pretense that said, I can leave the moment I want. I am not an addict. So I think one of the messaging that we need to do is actually to help people identify and distinguish something from a hobby to an indulgence to an addiction.
addiction, yeah, yeah.
And I think
All addicts are in denial. All addicts
right, right.
are
If we could do that, I know so many people. If
interesting.
if I could convince them that they are addict and you are not gonna be able to leave it without an external support, they may actually seek external support. The problem is they smoke, 10 cigarettes a day. On any given day, they will come up and they will say, "Hey, see, I haven't smoked for the last 2 days. I'm not dependent on smoking." And the third day they will start again. And that's kind of how life of most addicts.
There's the other interesting thing about addiction, right? Which is exactly this, where you are always in denial. You don't want to accept that you are. So there's this friend of mine who uh, developed, I would say, a heavy drinking problem, where she would start drinking every day at 7:30 in the evening, and she would drink till 10:30, 11, 12 till she slept, and then she would do everything the next day pretty normally till it was 6:37 again, and then nothing would stop her from pouring that first drink. And this went on for a few years, and I noticed this had started sort of showing on her, obviously on her face, in the mornings. It had become, her skin had become a little weird, and I told her that, I said, listen, you need to start watching your drinking. I'm noticing something like going wrong with you, because I think you're drinking too much. And I could tell her that, when she was such a close friend.
Sure.
And she said, no, dude, I can stop when I want to. It is just that I enjoy doing it. I said, if you enjoy doing it, you wouldn't do it every day. I enjoy
Yeah.
eating crabs. Really, I really love eating crabs. I don't eat crab every day, right? At 6:37. So she said, no, 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 of course not. I just enjoy it. I'm not addicted. I can stop whenever I want to. So I said, listen, do me a favor and go take an internet test. Okay, just go Google this. I'm not going to tell you which test to take. Just Google this. Take an internet test, and find out on the basis of your answers if you're addicted to alcohol. And she said, okay, I'll do it maybe next week. And she actually did it, right? Now she actually did it. And here's what she did. And this is what interesting behavior patterns are about people who are in denial. So she took a test, okay? And she took the first test very honestly. And obviously, the results came out of 10 questions that, listen, you answered 8 positive. So this means you have a problem with alcohol. The second test she took, Again said you have a problem with alcohol. She took 5 tests till the fifth one said, you may not have a problem with drinking. And then she took screenshots of the fifth test that she took and she sent me saying, this is the fifth test I took, but she was honest enough. This is the fifth test I took, but this one says I'm not drinking. I don't have a problem. I said,
Correct.
listen, that is the fucking problem. You are looking for what we call as, as in my language, I call it a confirmation bias, where you're actually looking for someone to tell you what you want to hear, and you will go on asking the question to 10
And it's
different
done.
people till you get the answer you want. And that's really what it is. And I think interesting thing coming from what you suggested is that we need people to start understanding these very patterns of their own selves, where how we live in denial, how we look for confirmation biases, how we look for answers that we want to hear so that we can keep our addiction alive.
And this
And the more,
problem becomes multifold complicated when we
yeah,
start thinking about behavior addictions, when we start thinking about gaming and gambling and,
yeah,
porn for that matter, or internet or social media. I mean, nobody is addicted to Instagram reels till they spend 4 hours, while they spend 4 hours a day watching them.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's harder to address, and it's harder to address uh, when there's no telling physical harm. At least with alcohol, with smoking, with drugs, I can say, okay,
Physical
here
harm, right?
there is.
Right. That's the distinction between substance use as well and behavior. So I guess for me, when people ask me, I mean, I say number one is people need to identify the difference between addiction, indulgence, and hobby, and that will really help. Number two, there need to be a lot more vernacular language support that is available to people. Number three, the support needs to be affordable, accessible. And one other, one comment that I use with people is, जिस दिन कोई आदमी अब आदमी या औरत अपने स्पाउस, अपने माँ बाप या अपने बच्चे, तीनों में से किसी के सर पे हाथ रख के बोले आज के बाद नहीं पीऊंगा, आज के बाद नहीं खाऊंगा, आज के बाद नहीं करूंगा, उस दिन, दैट इज द डे व्हेन यू गिव देम डी एडिक्शन. You giving them de-addiction when they have become so damn addicted that they need to start drinking alcohol at 7 in the morning. Doesn't necessarily work very well. So you need to provide that the early support in addiction is an extremely important part of it. Hey, Niranjan, with that, I mean, it's been a fabulous conversation. I think we have covered a lot in terms of what is it that can be done in terms of messaging communication for de-addiction, in terms of what kind of solutions, how solutions, and what is it that we can do in terms of providing support to people. It's been a fabulous conversation.
Likewise, absolute pleasure chatting. Yeah.
Candid. I mean, I think it's been interesting. I'm hoping, and actually, I'm sure the audience is going to like the conversation. I'm sure for many of them, it will give them some tidbits, some insights into what is it that they can do about their addictions, or what kind of support and what kind of checkups can they get done. Any last thoughts, any parting thoughts that you would want to leave the audience with?
Absolutely. That one thing that, and I tell everyone this, that if I could smoke and then I could stop smoking, anybody can stop whatever they want to stop. Because I thought I was the world's worst addict, but I proved myself wrong. I would like to, it's that easy.
Great. And for everybody listening to this, kick smoking with Ninja. Do not quit smoking with Ninja. Kick smoking with Ninja. And absolutely get the book, read the book. It's going to help you. It's going to provide you tips and tricks. And it's going to tell you why you need to quit, because it's a bad habit and because you need to get out of it, not because you need to do a sacrifice in your life. So with that, thank you so much, Niranjan. It's been a pleasure. Look forward to having many such engaging sessions with you, and look forward to doing some kind of collaboration, some kind of work with you separately, as well as we look at Praram Life initiative and the de-addiction capability that we are providing through our platform.
For sure, Kapil. Thank you so much for having me, and always here. Happy to help.
Thank you so much.
Good luck. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.